Hey y'all, welcome back to Exile Wargaming. Today we're going to be talking about winning with Harlequins in competitive 10th edition Warhammer 40k. Now in the first video we talked about how to build a good list, what the core of our army should be so that we can tackle all comers. In this video we're going to talk some strategy against more vehicle heavy based armies themselves. Now this is very predominant in the meta right now. When I started developing this list I was playing against Chosen, Chaos Space Marines, Black Templar Gladius, traditional Black Templars. Now we have Dark Angels, Ironstorm lists, but there's Votan, Tau, Death Guard, and a few others out there as well. This list will run very, very strongly into. Now, first and foremost, we want to tackle the list that we're going to be bringing today in case you missed the first video. What we have here is a Death Jester, Solitaire, 2 Troop Masters, 5 units of Harlequin troops with fusion pistols, 2 Star Weavers, 3 Falcons for those Troop Masters and troops to get into, 2 units of 2-man Sky Weavers with Haywire and Star Bolus, 3 D Cannons, and 2 units of Swooping Hawks. Now this is 19 total units at 2,000 points on the nose. The list we're going to be going up against is a very traditional Black Templar Gladius list. We have an Apothecary Biologist with Fire Discipline attached to a 6-man squad of Eradicators that'll be in a Land Raider Redeemer. We have 2 captains, one with the Honor Vehement, one with Artificer Armor attached to both Sword Brethren squads. We have High Marshal Helbricht attached to our 3rd Sword Brethren squad. We have 3 Black Templar Impulsors to transport them around. We have 2 Scout squads, 2 Inceptor squads, one with Assault Bolters, the other with the Plasma, and then a Calidus Assassin. Now this is 13 total units at 1995 points, so as close as 2,000 as we can get. Now, the game itself is being done on GW terrain. I believe this was Mission J. So we had this diagonal sort of deployment here as priority targets and nothing else super special. So let's get it onto the tabletop. What we're going to see here as far as deployment is the Black Templars pretty much deployed on the line. Now, I know this is kind of a bot style deployment itself. Just push forward, hope you're durable enough, and you can get your Sword Brethren and Eradicators in engagement range of a good number of my units quickly. But to be realistic, with a lot of these vehicle heavy lists, these transport heavy lists, they take up a lot of space. There's a lot to maneuver around on the GW terrain, and there's not many options. Now, on the Harlequin side, what you're going to see is a lot of symmetry. We have Falcon, Star Weaver, Sky Weavers up top, behind cover, behind the ruins themselves. On the bottom, you're going to see another Falcon, Star Weaver, and Sky Weavers. We have 2 squads of Swooping Hawks in our back line. These are basically going to be used for secondary objectives. If I need to cleanse an objective or investigate signals, they can do that just fine. There's a Death Jester behind this ruin as well. And then the Solitaire in the center, if I get something like Area Denial. That is a really good place to be, or deploy teleport homers early on, depending what our opponent decides to do, and then he can phantasm out to safety. But most importantly is where we position our D cannons. Now we have 1 D cannon in the back, we have 2 in the front, about 2 inches off the line. Why this is important that we have them off the line is because our opponent deployed on the line, and we far out deployed them. Now, what happens with the Land Raider Redeemer is it can move about 12 inches. It's going to get to about here. It can let out the Eradicators 3 inches. Hopefully they take the bait and they go for this Falcon over here. But then they have about a 10 or 11 inch charge into my D cannons or Falcon from there if they tried to tie up some of my units. If I deployed on the line, they would only have like an 8 or a 9 inch charge, which is much more realistic. So if the Black Templars get first turn, I'm pretty safe out of deployment range. If we get first turn, I could just move these D cannons up and I'll have range on the Redemptor and this Impulsor over here as well. But I do recognize this is sort of a bot style deployment, so just take this for what it is. It's just kind of an idea on what you can do with this army moving forward. Moving on to our first turn, Black Templars got the turn 1 move. They moved up their impulsors, and it looks like they're just kind of staging on this side of the board, trying to overwhelm a certain flank. Now the Land Raider Redeemer moved up, got out the Eradicators. The other impulsors just staged on the objectives themselves. This impulsor in the middle ended up firing its multi-meltas. Through some good saves, we ended up in a little bit of luck, only taking 2 wounds on one of the Skyweavers themselves. This Land Raider fired all of its available shots into this Falcon, and the Eradicators eliminated the rest of the Falcon. Now this Falcon over here was kind of placed as bait. What I really wanted this army to do is push up towards this angle with kind of a juicy target. Now the Troop Master was not in this unit. When the Falcon blew up, the troop ended up getting out behind this wall over here. But other than that, that is pretty much it. There's not much range in a list like Black Templars as well. They have a lot of multi-melta, but everything else is just kind of middling firepower, and we're still out of range of the Redeemer's Flamestorm cannons. So the following turn is where things got a little bit spicy. Now, what we'll see here is I moved the Skyweaver all the way to this no man's land objective over here, got out our Harlequin troop with the 2 fusion pistols outside the wall itself. Now, at the end of the fight phase, as long as these guys aren't in combat, they can get back in the Starweaver itself. So this Starweaver, with grenades and 2 fusion pistol shots, were actually able to bring down this impulsor itself. Now, these 2 Skyweavers in the center ended up splitting fire. One of them shot into the Land Raider Redeemer, the other shot into this impulsor here. Now, before we kind of dig into this, let's go over the Redeemer itself. This Falcon positioned to get angles on the Redeemer. It did land a Bright Lance shot, and as you can see on here, if you land a shot with a Bright Lance or a D cannon early on with the Land Raiders, it is important to shove that 6 on your fate dice into the damage. Between Armor of Contempt, cover, everything else, any save that we get is huge on these big vehicles. So I wounded with the Bright Lance. We put in a 6 on the fate dice, did 8 total damage. When this Skyweaver fired in, we got another 3 wounds on here. And then we fired a single D cannon, which ended up doing 7 more wounds to the Land Raider Redeemer itself. We did overkill it by 2, I believe. It did not blow up, unfortunately. From there, we had this Falcon up top fire into the impulsor with the Bright Lance, everything that it had, and we ended up dropping the second impulsor itself. So far we've killed 1, 2, 3 vehicles on turn 1. This down here, we ended up moving our Starweaver into position. We are in Melta range. It is open top, so we can shoot those fusion pistols out of that, especially being assault as it is. We did a good number of wounds, and then the Starweavers, or the Skyweavers over here, ended up finishing it off. From here, we still had 2 D cannons left to fire, and they ended up tearing into the Sword Brethren unit on this block, leaving just High Marshal Helbrecht left. So in one turn, we eliminated 3 impulsors, a Redeemer, and Sword Brethren in just shooting. Moving on to the charge phase, we ended up charging with our Harlequins that got out of this Falcon early on and staged behind the runes with the Solitaire into the Eradicator unit itself. We wiped all of them, minus the Apothecary Biologus. Everything else kind of stayed as it is. So we've downed 2 infantry units and 4 vehicles in our turn 1. In Black Templars turn 2, we start taking some casualties. The scouts moved up on this top flank, fired into the Starweaver. Combine this with the shooting coming from the Sword Brethren, they were able to bring the Starweaver down. The Biologus moved on to the objective itself. These Sword Brethren ended up firing into this Starweaver, try to bring that down. And then we had 2 squads of Inceptors drop. Now, you got capture enemy outpost, which is, I believe, why we came back here. Attempted to eliminate the Falcon. It lived on quite a few wounds. And then another squad of Bolter Inceptors back here. I think the goal was to try to eliminate the Swooping Hawks. Unfortunately, without being able to bring down the Star Weaver, they ended up shooting into this as well, and through some miracle saves, the Star Weaver was surviving on 1 wound. So we move into the charge phase itself. These Sword Brethren at the bottom were able to take out the Star Weaver and the Sky Weavers. Helbrecht actually charged the Harlequins in the middle. We used heroic intervention on the Solitaire, and the Solitaire ended up downing High Marshal Helbrecht before he got a chance to fight. Up top, this Harlequin unit was destroyed as well. So we did lose 2 Star Weavers and a unit of Harlequins on this list, or on this so far. But so far, so good. We're only down 1 Falcon, 2 Star Weavers, and a unit of Harlequins. Now, the unit of Harlequins that originally got out of the Falcon that blew up are now back in the new Falcon as well. Now, as you can see from here, this was pretty much the end of the game for the Black Templars. In our movement phase, we pretty much just moved everything up that we needed to. We picked up a squad of Swooping Hawks to ensure whatever other objectives we may need. This Falcon pushed up. It ended up letting its troops out. They charged the Sword Brethren. We had fusion pistols. We had grenades. We had the entire Falcon shooting its base into them as well. We wiped the entire unit. The Solitaire, who was in the center here next to this Harlequin troop, ended up blitzing to the home objective, killed an entire squad of scouts over here. We fell back with our Harlequin unit. We ended up annihilating the Sword Brethren with D cannons, this Falcon, and the Jester remaining over here. And that was it. Very realistically, very reasonably, we were able to table an entire army inside of just 2 turns. The firepower coming from this unit is immense. It doesn't really matter most often how good your opponent's saves are when we have Fate Dice, we have devastating wounds, and we have an ability to push through damage with Bright Lances or grenades or tank shock or the abundance of multi-melta and fusion damage that we bring into play. It hits hard. Now, what you'll notice, though, is against other units or other armies that may have flyers or faster moving units or something to try to tie us up, that's when we may position a little bit differently. Instead of having our Swooping Hawks deployed in the back, we may have our Swooping Hawks deployed up front so that they can move block for our first couple turns. Against monster heavy armies, we're going to use our Sky Weavers to do that instead, because they don't get very many good targets, being that they're anti-vehicle as well. But the game plan will be very, very similar. I don't know what else our opponent could have done in this game. There are a few things. I'm sure I'm not the greatest Warhammer player on the planet, but it really puts them in a predicament. Do they pull their vehicles back? Do they stage in different sections and allow us to just nickel and dime them on primaries and secondaries the entire game? Or do they go for that push first and foremost in the beginning of the turn? I've seen it a couple different ways, and it tends to work out the same point-wise in each different game itself. It's just a matter of how long do you want to play. So I really believe that this Harlequin list itself is strongest against these vehicle-heavy armies. We have ridiculously high anti-vehicle damage. The army itself is highly mobile. We have a high volume of devastating wounds, melta damage. We have indirect fire to keep them from staging in appropriate points behind walls or ruins. And most of our units are very multi-purpose, especially the troop. Fusion pistols, grenades, being able to get +1 to wound on the charge. They really allow us to punch through anything and everything as long as we combine our fire wherever we need. But at the end of the day, it ends up just being too many units for elite armies to deal with. Right? It doesn't matter how many Redemptors you have if they're not dropping multiple Star Weavers or Falcons each turn. And when that happens, we have the mobility enough to either pull back or charge into a pretty decent alpha strike, turn 2 if need be. Hope this gets you a good idea on what this army is really and truly capable of, how punishing it can be to someone who doesn't respect our Vamage, and how much firepower it really and truly brings to bear. Now, over the next couple weeks, we'll be releasing a few other videos against some different armies on different terrain layouts. We're probably still going to follow the GW theme itself, but right now we're targeting Custodes, uh, Chaos Knights, Necrons, Hypercrypt Legion, and Vanguard Space Marines, just to name a few. But I really appreciate you for watching. I cannot thank you enough. Please, please, please like, share, subscribe, whatever you can do to help the channel. As a new channel, every little bit helps more than you can ever know. I appreciate you again. Thanks a lot. Take care.